Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the movie Michael, and in the second half, I'm going to review The Devil Wears Prada 2. So starting off with Michael, this is basically a Michael Jackson biopic from director Antoine Fuqua. The film has already become fairly infamous due to the behind-the-scenes issues the film faced during production. Basically, if you don't already know, the film had finished shooting. They had basically completed, everything they shot. And then the Michael Jackson estate foolishly realized they couldn't actually use most of the third act in the film because it addresses some of the allegations Michael Jackson got later in his life. And supposedly there was a clause in there saying they couldn't talk about one of the victims and maybe some other stuff with that. But basically, it ended up rendering most of what they shot completely useless. And I have no idea how, none of this got past anyone before they shot the whole thing. But in any case, they basically had to remake, the entire third act. They had to create a new third act from scratch, which is an incredibly difficult task. Basically, if you can't even, address some things you were going for, they really had to just kind of rethink the entire third act of the movie and just make it something completely different. And going off of that, though, reviews came out for the film and were not very good, to say the least, which made me a little more nervous even than I already was. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of Fuqua as a director. Not saying as a person. I mean, as a person, I'm sure he's fine and a nice guy. But just as far as his movies go, I don't really think a lot of them connect with me very much. They just don't really do a whole lot for me. So I was definitely skeptical going into this film. But what did I think of it? Well, it's actually kind of decent. I will say it's kind of decent. But you need to know what you're getting into and whether this will even be for you or not. And I would say if you're looking for kind of like a deep analysis into who Michael Jackson is and all of his flaws as a person, you're just not getting that here. This is not the kind of movie you want for that. I would say this film is about as bare bones as you can get in developing Michael Jackson. And I think you kind of just have to know what that's going to look like. But if you watched a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody and loved it, I can't see why you wouldn't at least enjoy this. Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm not even a big fan of that film. I think that movie might be more well made than this in certain areas. It definitely has more of an overarching narrative. It actually has, things it's building up to. But on the other hand, Michael is kind of only a part one movie, so it's kind of like a lot of the payoff you're waiting for is supposed to be in the sequel that's going to come out. TBD on whether that, when that actually happens, but right now it seems like it probably will. It's making a lot of money. But anyway, I find Michael a little less frustrating than Bohemian Rhapsody to me because it's only half the story, and also it doesn't fall into all the same tropes as a typical music biopic. At least I don't think it does. I mean, it does get kind of tropey, but it's not it doesn't do everything you expect. It doesn't do the, oh, he meets his band members, Bohemian Rhapsody did all that. He meets the band members, and then they're recording the solo, and then the drug addiction, and he wants to break up from the band, and this movie does some of that, but it does it in a little bit less of an obvious way. It does it a little more naturally, I think, and therefore it's not quite as frustrating to me. But I would say the movie is a bit more interested in looking at a very specific part of Michael's life, and that's his relationship with his dad. That's kind of the movie's main focus, and everything that happens in the movie kind of leads back into that, which I thought was actually kind of nice. I like that this movie does have a very specific angle. It's not a very big deep dive into that. I think, you look at a movie like the recent Springsteen biopic that came out, that was not, that's basically the complete opposite of what this movie is, because this movie is, all music, very little character development, and then the Springsteen movie was, all character development, very little music, and, I mean, I think I would have liked this to be a little more of an in-between of that, but I do like that this movie does have a focus on something in Michael's life and isn't just kind of your generic, we're just gonna kind of show a little bit of everything. It's a very specific thing it's going for. But I do want to clear up something very quickly about this movie, and that is Jafar Jackson is excellent here. He's Michael Jackson's nephew, and you wouldn't think that a family member would necessarily be the best pick because we don't even know if he can act. I mean, obviously, like, he's a family member, and that makes, like, his resemblance very similar, but that could fall completely flat if he doesn't know how to act, really. But I thought he did a great job here and completely embodied all of the mannerisms, the dancing, and the way he spoke. It just feels like we're watching Michael Jackson. And just earlier in the day, before I saw this movie, I saw the Broadway show MJ, which is also about Michael Jackson. To be honest, I didn't think that play was all that great. Actually, I mean, on a side note, I think that and this movie were very similar in a lot of ways. Even like similar events that this stuff covered. Like, it was really bare bones for both of them. But anyway, I thought the guy in that show felt like an impersonation of Michael Jackson to me. But I think on the other hand, Jafar Jackson doesn't feel like an impersonation. He feels like the real thing, which is a really big compliment. About as big of a compliment as I can give on his performance, because I did not feel like I was watching an actor, try to be Michael Jackson. I felt like I was just watching Michael Jackson, and that's a really great thing. But at its core, this movie, Michael, is basically just a greatest hits collection. You're not learning much about Michael, and you're not learning much about a lot of the people in his life. This movie really is defined by the music, and luckily the music is very good. I love Michael Jackson's songs. He has a lot of great hits. But you don't even really learn too much about, like, how the songs came to be. You just kind of jump from one thing to the next, like, oh, we're gonna do this song now, and it's like, okay. But, like, when we don't have the music in this movie, I did still find myself engaged in seeing the dynamic with Joe Jackson, his controlling, abusive father, played by Coleman Domingo. I think we get some really good scenes with that, and just kind of seeing his mindset and how it affects Michael. And we get some good scenes with the mom too, but almost nothing with the siblings, surprisingly, which felt like a bizarre choice to me because it's like the Jackson 5. But we really barely get anything with the siblings, and I thought that was a little disappointing. But as far as movies go, it's an entertaining experience. It recreates a lot of great moments from Jackson's life. The pacing is good, it's well shot, and the story is engaging. It's just really that the movie doesn't have much in the way of substance. Like, if you're looking for a deeper look into Michael Jackson, you're just not going to get that. And I never really watched any of this movie and thought I understood Michael Jackson as a person any better. I never thought that watching this movie really helped me understand him more than I did it, before I watched it, or just reading a Wikipedia page or seeing another documentary of him. Like, it's a very simple look at Michael Jackson, and you can't help but feel like a guy like him deserves and probably should have a lot more of a complex, analysis of his life. Maybe the estate just doesn't want that. Maybe they just want Michael Jackson to be seen as a very pure person, given that there are a lot of controversies. But I don't know. I mean, this movie was planning on addressing some of those, so it's hard to really say, like, what happened there. I don't know if they just kind of decided, like, we're just going to make this a very positive spin on his life after that. I don't know. Can't help but feel like maybe there are some, legal things with that, but I don't know. Maybe not. But I think the best biopics often show more about the life of our favorite artists and how they got to where they are. I mean, just recently we had Better Man, which I stand by as the best musical biopic ever made. It was just so creative and fun and moving, and despite being kind of tropey, it found a way to feel fresh. And I just love that movie. I mean, it really, like, I understood who Robbie Williams was after that movie, and I really got to learn a lot about him and just kind of his mentality and, the way he sees things, the way he viewed things, like why he was the way he was. I don't really feel like I got that with Michael. Michael doesn't really have any of that going for it. And I think your enjoyment on this movie will entirely vary on how much you want to learn more about the man in the mirror. If you want to really learn about him, then this movie's going to disappoint you and probably going to leave you a bit, empty. But if you just want to watch, like, a really good, like, actor be Michael Jackson and sing the songs and do the dance moves and really just recreate a lot of what Michael Jackson was, on stage, then I think that'll be a really good experience for you, and you'll probably get a really good time with it. And to be fair, I thought what we got here was well executed. Like, for what they set out to do, they did it fairly well. It makes Michael Jackson out to be pretty perfect and a superstar in every way. It makes you appreciate his music even more and want to get on your feet and dance. But as we all know, Michael Jackson was far from a perfect person. He was a man of many flaws and controversies. And it's not the movie's fault it couldn't explore that because they tried to, only for it to be reworked. And kind of going off of that, the third act, as is, doesn't even really feel like an ending. It doesn't feel like a third act because it was changed. Like, the whole thing was changed. But it doesn't really feel like something that the movie was building up to for a while. Like, it just kind of feels like a tacked on thing. And I'll say this much, like, watching the movie, I wasn't ever really thinking like, oh, this feels like a reshoot. But after I'm kind of sitting on the movie a bit and like looking back, you can kind of tell where they had to make stuff up because it just kind of goes in circles. Like, there was something that kind of was getting resolved earlier in the movie, and then all of a sudden it becomes a problem again, and you're like, oh, that's probably where they had to make a third act. Like, that just doesn't really... It was kind of already a resolved thing, and now we're, like, doing it again. That's kind of how it felt. It was a little bit redundant, but it was still fine. Like, I thought there were good scenes. The third act kind of puts more extra emphasis on Joe Jackson's hold on the family and how Michael became more independent from that. But it also completely glosses over some stuff like something involving his hair that in real life was a very big deal in the long term. In the movie, it feels kind of like an afterthought. I don't know if the plan is to like really go more into that in the next film, or if it's just kind of like just we're kind of writing that off here. I don't know. But it just felt like we were kind of sacrificing some big things that feel important just to kind of make them happen quickly. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain without spoiling it. I mean, it's a true story, so nothing to really spoil, but I don't know. There were just some things I would have liked them to hold a little longer on. It's kind of hard to review this movie though because objectively it's kind of generic and safe as far as biopics go. Like, I don't think this movie just does anything very special or particularly great. But subjectively, if you just want to be entertained and listen to good music in a decently well-made film, this should do the trick. Like, I think it's very entertaining. It's a good time, and, I would certainly watch it again. I don't think it deserves the bad reviews it got. Like, this movie has some really bad reviews. I don't think it deserves that. Like, I think it should be a bit higher. I think people are being a little too harsh on it. But at the same time, I also think it could have been a lot better. Probably should have been better, but I'm still decently happy with what we got. So I will rate Michael a B minus. Alright, and next up is Devil Wears Prada 2. So here is a movie I frankly didn't have any interest in when it was announced. I had never seen the original film and didn't really seem, really up my alley. Plus, the sequel was coming out 20 years later and appeared to be pretty unnecessary. And on top of all that, the trailers looked just fine to me, so I wasn't really even that excited from the marketing. So I was definitely skeptical about the film. But then a couple weeks before this came out, I decided to give the original movie a watch to see what all the hype was about, because this movie does have a lot of people, really excited for it, and a lot of people love the original. Over the years, I have heard people talk about it. I just never really knew it was, like, that popular until this movie was coming out. But I thought the first movie was really good, actually. I really enjoyed it. It's a nice story about this woman named Andy who takes on this job as a fashion intern in hopes of getting her long-term goals. But in the process, she finds that her boss named Miranda is kind of this awful, soulless person, and she's basically, I guess, like, metaphorically selling her soul to the devil as long as she continues to work for her, and kind of shows us, like, what she loses in the process of that. And that film shows how Andy's job affects her relationships in life and her own mental health and mentality. I thought that was all really interesting, and I think that movie has a lot going for it. But I also don't think it's a movie that inherently warrants a sequel. But then again, Hollywood loves banking on nostalgia, even as seen in Michael. At the very least, they still did get the same creative team and cast back for this one. So it's not like they cut corners in any way. Like they really did try to get everyone back together to make this as similar to the original as possible. And I give them credit for that because that can get expensive. But they did get everyone back. As for this film itself, I would say it's decent. Admittedly, I think it's kind of a mixed bag with some things I really enjoyed, other things I could have done without. I definitely don't think it holds a candle to the original film, but I could see some people thinking they're about on par with each other. For me, though, as for what I liked in this sequel, it's mostly regarding the cast. Everyone does a great job again, and even 20 years later, nobody's missed a beat. It's like they never stopped playing these characters. Anne Hathaway, Emily Blunt, Meryl Streep, and Stanley Tucci are great. All of them have wonderful chemistry together and are a lot of fun to watch on screen. Regardless of what's happening in the story, I did enjoy seeing these actors interact together again, and that was definitely a huge highlight in this film. And obviously the first film too. Like it was just really they make the movies, both of them. Like just the actors really do a great job in these films. Their characters feel like they do feel pretty iconic, even though it's only two movies, both of which 20 years apart. Like, I really enjoy seeing their characters interact together. So that was really good. The soundtrack is great here and has a ton of awesome song choices. The fashion and outfits and the costume design are all very good here, as expected. And throughout, you get these great character moments, particularly with Miranda and Nigel, which was kind of surprising to me. I didn't expect to get quite as much from them. Miranda especially gets a lot of development in this film. Like, it felt like she got a little bit in the first one. They were kind of slowly, like, unveiling her a little bit. This movie actually does a lot to her character, which I could see being a controversial choice for some, but I did like it, actually. I thought it was a good choice. And Nigel gets some payoff to things that were teased in the first movie, but not, like, really paid off, which made seeing this one feel a bit rewarding as a viewer. It made it more satisfying to me. And I thought that was really nice. But I think kind of moving on to some stuff that I wish was better here, it kind of goes in that I like Andy and Emily as characters, but I don't think they really have too much in the way of development here. At least not nearly as much as Miranda and Nigel. Like, those two get some really nice scenes and development. Andy and Emily here just kind of feel like they're the same as we left them in the last film. Like, they don't really feel like they've gone through that much of a journey. Maybe Emily a little more in some ways because she kind of has some more motive in this one. Andy, like, she just kind of became more of a journalist and like a writer, and that was very interesting. But the movie kind of starts off like she's already like that, so I don't know. It wasn't like we really saw her grow in this movie. Like, she grew outside of the first movie. So I don't know. Like, I think, like, yes, both characters have things that contribute to the story, but I don't think they really grow that much, in my opinion. Andy, in particular, here feels pretty static. I think there's this new romance subplot with her that I frankly think should have been cut almost entirely. Like, it didn't really go anywhere interesting and wasn't directly related to the story in any meaningful way. It's really no more development in a relationship than she had in the first film, so I don't really see what the point of it was besides maybe like a mandatory romance subplot. I don't know. I don't know if that was something like they just thought they had to have in this movie, but it just didn't really make a difference to me. Like, it felt like it was just so unnecessary, and every time we kept cutting back to it, I was like, why is this even in the movie? Like, there's really nothing that this is contributing to her character or the story. Maybe someone can, like, enlighten me on if they thought it was really necessary to the film, but to me, it's probably one of the biggest weak points. And on the other side of that coin, though, there are scenes I actually really wish didn't get cut off. Like, there are some scenes here that I wanted to go on for a lot longer. And one involves Stanley Tucci towards the end of the film as Nigel. Like, there's one scene with him that I thought really could have been great. Like, and it could have been one of the best scenes in the movie, but they cut it off really early. And I'm not sure why they did that. Maybe just for time, but I thought that could have been a good scene. Not sure why they cut that. But I would say my main criticism with this movie is probably that the plot is all over the place. Like, part of what makes the first movie so effective to me is that it's simple and to the point. Everything ties into each other and it feels like a well thought out story. Here, it feels like they didn't really know what to make the movie about, so it's juggling like a bajillion storylines that don't all work together. Again, you have this romance subplot that didn't even need to be in the movie. You could have cut that out. You have this whole thing about the owner of the magazine and his son that seems overly complicated, didn't really need to be that way. There's a bunch of other stuff too, but it feels like it's just biting off way more than it can chew, and as a result, it feels kind of unfocused to me. Like, it doesn't really feel like it knows what it wants to do. It doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to be, like, the main story here. I'm not sure why that's the case since they had so much time to get it right in the writer's room. Like, they had, like, a ton of time to write this film. But it definitely feels like they had way too many ideas that they wanted to use and weren't willing to cut any of them out. So they just kind of decided, you know what, like, let's just throw all of them in here and just see how much we can get done. And I don't think that was the right choice. I think if they really wanted to, they could have tried to make a third film after this and, like, incorporate some of the ideas there and really give more focus to them. But here, to me, it's just a very convoluted script that needed to just be a bit more condensed and simplified. But still, this is a fun and entertaining movie that is very enjoyable to watch, even with its flaws. Like, I know I just mentioned a ton of flaws here, but overall, it is a very enjoyable movie to watch still. Like, I did really like it, and the more I think about it, I think I've almost appreciated it more after kind of giving it some more thought. Like, it's a movie I do kind of want to watch again. I don't know if I will in theaters or not, but it's a movie that I would definitely be open to revisiting for sure. I'd actually say I feel pretty similarly about both this and Michael in that way, though, where I'm like, these are very flawed movies, but they are very entertaining movies, and I did enjoy watching them, and I was satisfied with them. I do think a lot of fans of the original will be happy with this movie, and I think it's great to see these characters again. I'm sure people will be super thrilled about that. I mean, sure, this movie is kind of unnecessary to exist, but I'd say as long as you're having fun with it, does it really matter? So that's my thoughts on Devil Wears Prada 2. I'm going to rate the film a B minus. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.